Okay, I'm back with another video about perspective. So in this video, I'm not going to talk about fancy drawing. And in my previous one, I think I also emphasized that the illusion of depth, which is what perspective drawing is not only dependent upon fancy drawing. It's can be equally a matter of arrangement and proportion, which I'm going to show you here. And it's not a matter of convergence lines, like people always think of perspective, vanishing points and that. Now that does come into it, and I might show some of that in this video, but there's a technique here I'm going to show called hanging figures on the horizon line that's really fundamental, and it really helps get a sense of depth. It's a way of relating figures to the horizon line, which is built into the basic laws of reality. So to start, what I've got here, as you can see, is 3 groups of cutouts. And what I did is I just Googled images, human silhouettes, and then I cut out a bunch. I found a whole bunch, and I roughly cut them out. It was kind of fun. Get the old scissors out, print them out. And they're in 3 groups. This group over here is like full size, so to speak. This is about 2/3, and about these couple are for distant figures. The exact relationship doesn't matter. It's just that you want the effect of, as you would draw in a picture, depth. Some are closer, some are farther away. So I'm going to show with overlapping how you have to think about this. And there's a variety of figures here. Some of them are walking, some are standing, some are sitting, as you'll see as we go. This one has Vamp Mom with Balloon Boy. So they're just good because again, they're just silhouettes. They're not about drawing. They're fairly crude. I just grabbed them off the internet rather than take a lot of time drawing. This set of characters here is actually for another video I want to make, and they're on cardstock. And but I'm going to probably bring them into play here too. In fact, this might even be end up being the video where they get their claim to fame. And all it is cardstock that I just did a bunch of drawings on. And I cut them out and blacked in the other sides with marker. And it's really to think about silhouettes and about perspective and placement. But, we'll kind of get to that. So next I want to introduce what is the first line you want to think of when you are going to do a drawing. If it's going to be a drawing that is a depth drawing, like you would do in a comic book, or lots of cartooning, rougher cartooning, because this is not a matter of how realistic your style is or how cartoony. It's a matter of the way shapes relate to horizon lines. So the first line you should think of course, is your horizon line. And I'm going to just draw that here. This is going to be our horizon line. And in a picture, when you're doing perspective, so I got to black this in because that's going to bug me. You always want to think of your vantage point, like where's your camera looking, what angle, and what placement. And there's an aspect too. This is a bit tricky to explain all at once because these are sort of interlocking concepts that you have to get into your brain. And once you do, it all starts making sense. I made these. These are commonly used. They're just cardstock, and for cropping, right? You can see compositions. So if it comes to horizons, and a composition, say it's a horizontal one like this, I should really have black paper here to make the frame edges more clear on the video. But hey, the things we discover too late. Here in your picture, your horizon line is going to be high up in the frame, here low down, and so on. Or if you had a more squarish frame, it would be high up. So, okay, so that's introducing the idea of the relationship between the horizon line and the edges of your frame. And sometimes actually the horizon line might be outside your picture. You don't even see it if you're looking way down on something. So when you have a horizon line, there's a really basic principle, which is for anything of a given height, the horizon line will cross it at a common point. And I'll explain simply. And this got called by Andrew Loomis in one of his books, which I'll show in a second. He called it hanging figures in the horizon line. Let's assume that these people, these two characters, are the same height. They're both 6 foot high gentlemen. Now, if I make a picture where my camera is, let's say, at neck height, see it here, that would mean when I draw it, it's like this. Okay, see, it's going across his figure at his neck. Now, if he receded into the distance, the rule that you have to follow, I got my little figures mixed up here. And here he is here, he's smaller. Same guy. The one place where the lineup would be consistent is at the horizon. Above or below that, you get into a different situation. But if this is the same figure or the same height of person, like let's say this fellow is the same height, I'll show you in a sec. So the rule is let's say this guy's 6 feet. The horizon line, therefore, is at about maybe, what would that be, 5.5? Then you have to be consistent with that. And if this character, this gentleman here walking by, if he's the same height, 6 feet, then you can't just suddenly place him like here, because it doesn't make sense. You know, you have to align it with the same rule of thumb, which is, oh, it's roughly at his like upper shoulders or lower chin. And same for, like, say we have, I'm going to zoom in so we can see a little better. Give me a second. Where's my little, okay, here we go. Same for this guy, if he's the same height. So horizon line, same thing. And now, same thing going into the distance. If these people are all about that height, let's just say for the rule of, or for the sake of convenience, then we're going to place the horizon at the same spot. Okay? Now, if they were shorter people, like say this whole group of 3 people here were shorter, you put them down a bit, because if this is 5.5 feet in this scale or proportion, then if this guy's 5.5 feet high, then his head's just touching. That makes these people taller. Or the same within, let's say, an individual group. If we want this guy taller, we have to put him up a little bit. Now he's taller. But what we're doing is relating it to a consistent point of view. And the same thing, let's say we start over again and we're doing a different picture. And we say that we want to look down, or we want to almost look down, and we put them just roughly, just below touching, or just above touching. There's a tiny bit of his head there. You can't just suddenly put these people here. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but it won't make a picture that makes any kind of sense aligned to what our brains are used to seeing. So again, if you wanted to recede into the distance, you would follow the same rule of thumb. And again, this is given that they're all of a same height, which I'm doing that now to keep it simple. You're aligning them that way. And let's go the reverse. Like say you've got, it's at his knees. We're doing a low angle shot, you know, where the lines, if you did lines, it would be much lower to the ground. So again, you can't suddenly just have these people here. It makes no sense, right? So how do you align it? Well, you've got your rule of thumb that any given figure that's the same height, a 6 foot height, is at knee level. Well, they'd be like that. The horizon is cutting them at a consistent point. And same for this guy. You know, so it means that also, of course, when you're planning a figure, if you have this kind of situation and you're cropping, you have to be aware of what you're doing, because, you know, you might want a figure here in the corner for your composition, but it might not align with perspective. Now, some of this can be monkeyed with a little bit and like they say, fudged, but you have to first know these kind of rules before you can really get anywhere. And let's say you have someone sitting. I think I made these the same scale. I figured out that, you know, when you're sitting, sometimes the top of your head is roughly at chest or shoulder height. Depends on the size of the people. But again, if this person is roughly the same scale as that guy, then it'd have to be something like this. Because if you if you had them here, that they're the same size, roughly their heads. This woman is a little bigger. But like this, it makes no sense because she'd have to be sitting in a pit, right? Or if you put her up here, she'd have to be on some kind of stool or something, you know, like to justify that arrangement. So I got all kinds of other characters here. I don't know how many of them I should use. Presumably the idea is getting across, but let's do a little bit more. And if, you know, once you understand this, and I might demonstrate it with some line type perspective drawing. Once you understand this, it's really like the hidden treasure. It's just fantastic because it gives you a working basis to align things. And again, the first thing you should decide is that perspective horizon line. Like, where is my camera? Is it low angle, mid angle, high angle? Are we looking way down, way up? So here, let's say I align the horizon line at the waist. So then again, you'd put these at the waist if they're the same size people. Where's that kid gone? Okay, so here's vamping mom with her son, perplexed, watching her. Mom, I just want to float my balloon. Why are you dancing? If I put her up here like that, yeah, I mean, she'd either have to be standing on some kind of pedestal or floating in the air to justify that. I mean, if I put a shadow underneath, it might make sense, right? But because she's smaller, or even if she was up at the same scale, the rule is that roughly similarly proportioned people, the horizon line has to cut them at the same spot. So if her waistline would be right, like around there. As you can see for the little boy, because he's shorter, horizon line's hitting his head. So other little kids, if they're going off in the distance, you would align them. I don't know if I have another little guy, his clone twin. I don't know if I made him. Clone twin boy. He's not here, but if I had him in the distance, now that we know that for an object of this size, being a kid here, in this same environment, the horizon's hitting head, you'd have to do the same thing going off in the distance if you added more kids of the same height. So what happens, we have a clone of vamp mom, and if we want her closer for the effect of death, we have to do the same thing, you know, which you can see would then align with lines going to a vanishing point. But she doesn't have to be there. She could be here. She could be blocking out. This one could be blocking out. But again, if you did this in this same picture scenario, it would only make any kind of sense because she's bigger, but the horizon is higher on her. She'd have to be shorter, you know. And the more you did that, of course, the more ridiculous it would get. So this gets us into a next part. I think probably that's clear. We could use some of these guys actually to have fun. Cardboard cutout people, the cardboard gang. Let's have this guy come into the scene. So this gangster's hanging around. He's looking kind of side-eye and suspicious. So where do we put him? We haven't even moved him or posed him, but where do we put him to get him in the frame? Let's clear some of these out so we have a little bit of simplicity. Well, let's go over here like this. Actually, I don't have his waist. I should have, if I had drawn more of him, I'd have his waist. But let's assume his waist is down here somewhere. So what we see with this arrangement, he can't really even be in this picture very well, because his waist would be, if he's standing on the same flat plane with the same viewpoint, he would be up here somewhere, right? Because he's bigger. Same for this guy, Mr. Necktie. So let's do a thing where we can show them in screen. Like, let's say we want to have them in screen like this. Well, what do we got? We've got the horizon line is cutting his chin, roughly, middle of his chin. So this guy, if to make sense, if he's the same height, he'd have to be down here running by. And Gangster Man, doing the side eye, if I do put him down here, he's shorter. If I put him here, if he's the same height, the line is hitting his chin at roughly the same point. And now we have angsty, yelling, disturbed friend here who's just coming into the picture. He's been on the internet too much, having various bizarre arguments for no reason with strangers. And so he's really agitated. So where do we put him? Do we put him up here, down here? Well, if he's roughly the same height, chin, he's there. Now, I haven't even gone into, which is why I originally made these, the idea of how you overlap things. And, you know, that's like a whole video. But what's a good overlap and a bad overlap and the relationship with silhouettes? I mean, you've heard people talk about tangents, right? So this would be like a really bad overlap. And you see things like this that people do. It's like, come on, like his nose is touching the other guy is obscured. The two of them forming a combined silhouette that makes no sense, because if you look at that as one mass, you can't even distinguish them compared to that. So that's again another whole subject. But anyway, these are close-ups, and we're messing around with these to create compositions. This guy's getting closer. He's about to bash him. But let's say we say our horizon line is, you know, let's say armpits. So we could just align it that way. And then this guy, well, where's his armpit? He'd have to be up here to make it make sense, right? And it's getting into more of an upshot where the figures are staging up as, because the horizon line is lowering, the figures are staging up. This guy isn't even coming into play. What's he doing? I don't know. Can he be here? No, unless he's tiny, because he has to be behind. He's bigger than the other guys, but if he's crowding in for whatever reason, do we use the same rule of thumb, like armpit height, roughly like that, right? And if we go to like eye level, their camera's at an eye level, which is a very common thing in movies or whatever, if you want people to look at people's eyes, because another tidbit of useful information is people will scan along where the horizon line is, because we're used to doing that as we walk ahead in daily life. You don't typically look at the ground or look straight up at the sky. In general, as you're walking down the street, encountering other people or situations or driving or what have you, you're looking straight ahead. So we're used to that as being the plane upon which events happen to us as they come to us into our reality. And the same thing with the vanishing point of straight ahead. So that's called the crosshairs, which I haven't drawn a vertical one, but that could be anywhere here. So if these are eye level, I was just introducing that because that's again, I probably keep saying this, but that's another whole video, the crosshairs. It's like a target scope. So gangster guy here, eye level, eye level, eye level. And we start there, but if I want this guy to be shorter, then he's shorter because these guys' eye level is getting close to the top of his head. And this guy's back here yelling. He's always going to be yelling, frozen forever. But if we put him here, he'd be taller, he'd be standing on something, which he could be. Like, if you wanted a composition like this, you might find something I've done this lots of times, you find something in the picture where you can justify that placement making sense in the perspective. Like, you have a piece of landscape or an element that he's jumped up on or something like that. I think that's probably getting towards the end of explaining this. And if you play around with this and look for it in real life and in figures, people walking, in compositions and things, you can see where people use it or don't use it. And again here, like if I had a lower angle where it's almost at the tops of their skulls, well, this guy to be the same height, he'd have to be here, right? But then if I put him up, he's suddenly taller. If I put him down here, he's lower, he's shorter. So yeah, I'll see. I think that's good for this video. Hopefully that explained it. And if it wasn't clear, please let me know in the comments. It's called Hanging Figures on the Horizon Line. And there's actually more to it, but I don't want to make super long videos. Maybe one last thing to note is that the proportional relationship would be maintained as you go into the distance. So for example, if I have like, I'll do it with do it with my pen so we can see. If you have like an element that's, say whatever it is here, 1, 3, 4, and then these are units. And then here you have, see how that's a unit? Maybe let's make 2 of them, pretend they're squares or almost squares, right? So see how there's a missing one here, but it's down because this is smaller. This could be anything you want. It could be a figure inside here. It could be anything. But if you place it off in the distance, it's the same kind of thing repeated. So you can just make, like say that's your, and you want the same proportion as this. This is just off being a square. It's a bit rectangular. So say you've got like that. Well, that's established that. Then you do 1, 2, 3 more of them. And then you just do the same thing, right? And what that does is it makes it consistently aligning as it would to the laws of perspective going to a vanishing point. It's maintaining the relative proportions of things. Like this is a vertical rectangle here. And this is, you know, getting a little more horizontal. You could have your oval within it, but the idea is that you want to maintain the proportions of things as they go back in space, but you want to maintain the relationship of similarly sized things to the horizon line as they recede. And that will give you depth just by the arrangement, without fancy drawing and without lots of lines and convergence of the typical kind. So see if that makes sense and try it. And like I said earlier, if you have any comments or questions, leave them on this video, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you.